This is episode 11 of the Morebegsden. What's the crack? I'm your host again, Phil Spillane, and I'm in the outdoors. I've gone outside, and I'm with a poet, a cyclist, and a climate researcher. So it's absolutely perfect that we're in the outdoors. Dylan, what's the crack, man?
Hi, Phil. Good to be here. Thank you for having me on. It's really nice. We're sitting by the Gluckspin on the grounds of UCC, which is the institution that I do research for.
So it's even more perfect that we're here.
Exactly, and it's close to my house, so
you didn't have to walk too much.
No.
How are you keeping, man? Thanks for joining me here.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about the opportunity. I love that people are describing me as a poet. I've only been really writing earnestly for the past year. I mean, I wrote a lot as a teenager, as a lot of people do, but I've been really earnestly, thanks to the open mic space in Cork, getting back into poetry.
Fair play.
And it's I love it. It's very fulfilling. So.
Yeah. And how long you been on? How long you been here in Ireland?
7 years. 7 years as of last August, which is mad. I moved here in 2018. I remember specifically it was August 25th because that was the last time the Pope visited. It was the same day, and I was like, and I thought all the hubbub was for me, but apparently they weren't so excited about another 18-year-old American immigrant.
Maybe it was.
But yeah, no, I've lived in Dublin for 4 years doing my undergraduate, and then I sort of moved down to Cork, partially for the rent, partially for the people. I'm a culture at the end of the day, so while I like Dublin and I miss parts of it, like smaller communities suit me much better. And so Cork suits me down to the ground. It's exactly the right size for me.
And how do you find the art community in Cork?
Oh, it's fabulous. I've spoken to people in that, like, Cork as an art scene specifically, it's really, and a culture scene generally, it's really punching above its weight for a city that's only really a 250,000. There's a lot on, like we're drowning in open mics, we're drowning in festivals, like there's so many things on, and I think that's really to its credit. And there's other similarly sized cities across Ireland or across Europe that don't have nearly the sort of artistic energy and zeitgeist that Cork has, and I'd attribute that to the sort of, like, there's such a, entrepreneurial isn't quite the right word because it's not profit motivated, but there's such an entrepreneurial spirit of the people of Cork and the artists of Cork saying
opportunistic, maybe
opportunistic. Yeah, there's a go-getter, there's a drive, people don't sit around. If they want to create a space, they create it. If they have something to share, they share it. And I think we all inspire each other because of that. Like I said, I'm only an artist because there are so many artists in Cork, and it's really self-enforcing in a beautiful way.
Oh, it's so cool. It's good that it's all bouncing back. And what creative spaces are you involved in?
So I'm very unofficially involved in Litrica. I mean, I'm co-hosting.
Yes.
I've co-hosted twice.
We interviewed them back in February, I believed, yeah?
Yes. And Laoi, they're amazing poets and such great community organizers. It was their event, Litrica, that really inspired me to get back into writing, as well as the Underground Loft with your previous guest, Kieran.
Yes.
Their space is just insane, and I really value it. But of me personally, I help out a lot with Litrica. I'm more officially involved with the Cork Queer Nature Collective, where we, similar to what we're doing now, we encourage people to go out into nature. We give public lectures. We create these community spaces to talk about folklore and ecology and just get people to connect more with their surroundings. And then I'm also secretary of this group, Queer Bike Rides, which is a social club, not a sporty club, although we do sports, of course, you know.
It's exercise, and
It's
exercise and creativity. Go
yeah,
on.
we just want to make sure people don't feel like they have to be competitive. It's a
Mm.
very accessible space. I really love it. It makes me feel so good, just the physicality of it and the community. And then lastly, I think I should highlight, I'd be remiss not to highlight that I'm also on the board of directors for the Environmental Forum, which is an NGO, a policy NGO that mostly looks towards, I think our slogan is turning words into action or words into change or something of that. Like we often do a lot of lobbying. We connect a lot of researchers and policymakers, that sort of thing, trying to advocate for different environmental outcomes. So, you know, against LNG, liquid natural gas infrastructure, for example, or commenting on new public infrastructure such as the Cork Light Rail or bus routes, that sort of thing.
The transport.
Yeah, encouraging more sustainable development. So that's just all the stuff I do for free.
How do you juggle it all?
I love it. If I wasn't fulfilling, I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I think about how much civil society work I could get done if I didn't have to go to do a job. You know what I mean? You know, thankfully.
Oh, so like you're not. This is all like what some people could call voluntary. But
Yeah, exactly.
It's all life fulfilling, which
Yes.
definitely does. It definitely is its own price at the end.
Yeah.
Like, priceless, but a price, you know.
It's my life's work, you know what I mean? It's not the stuff I get paid for, but it is the stuff, you know, how we live our days is how we live our lives, and I really value, I'm very community orientated. I am very extroverted. I love people. I love getting to know people. I love hosting a space. I'm, you know, I don't want to bring too much of an American overconfidence to this, but I'm frankly good at it. You know what I mean? If I can say that about myself, like I'm a good facilitator. I really try to make people feel welcome. I'm very proactive about trying to make sure people feel included and that spaces are safe, that sort of thing. And so it's just like it just feels. I know I say it's my life's work, but it's extremely fulfilling. You know.
Yeah, and you see people grow. You make new friends, and you see people grow into themselves, and that can be thanks to your work.
Yeah, it's cultivating. I mean, I'm a steward, I'm a ecologist, I'm a gardener. Like, I mean, in these social scenes, and I think it's, you know, I'm 25 now. I'm still quite young in the grand scheme of things, but like, I'm getting to the point where I'm no longer sort of like the youngest person in the room all the time, and I think it's really wonderful seeing like
right to reach your 30s.
I know, it only gets better, right?
It only gets better.
But like, it's really nice.
You're the new generation. Go on.
Oh, I've been a climate youth activist my whole life. Don't tell me about like, oh, I'm not worried. You know, you guys will fix everything. Like, it'll be 30 years before anyone in Gen Z is in power. But anyway, my point being is it's really nice to like see young people, or people younger than me anyway, or not even necessarily younger than me, because I will see sometimes queer people who are sort of coming out later in life, and they're engaging in these queer spaces for the first time, and there's a vulnerability and there's a sensitivity to it.
Oh.
And, you know, it can be really scary going to these places, these events, especially if you don't know anyone. And so whether they're like a 19-year-old writing poetry for the first time, or whether they're a 40-year-old coming out of the closet for the first time, or whether they're, you know, an immigrant to Cork and they're trying to meet people, like, I just... you know, I've been all these things. I am an immigrant. I've had to come out multiple times in my life, and I've moved to cities and have been lonely, and I really just want to create a space. In all of my efforts and all my community organizing, I've really just worked to try to create a space where people feel like they can be authentic, and I feel like I've been successful in that. I feel I have numerous friends who've told me they've only sort of been comfortable coming out with their queerness because of the community spaces that I've welcomed them into, or that I run, which is, so I'm making people gay. So is the long and short of it.
Well, no, you're making a space where they feel comfortable, and I wonder, now that you're saying it, I wonder why that is. Why, in a poetry scene, does it make people comfortable that they can come out with their sexuality?
Yeah.
I wonder why. Is it because that's their pack? Do they feel like they found their pack? I think we touched a little bit about it previously, but I wonder what you think.
I think because it's a sensual space. You know what I mean?
Sensual, okay.
And it's a place of self-expression. And if you're asked to sort of sit with your emotions and express yourself, you're asked to actually interrogate yourself a little bit. And to a lot of us in poetry, we're trying to say something honest. It doesn't actually matter what it is. It's based on our own experiences, but we're trying to be honest. And I think when you're asked to sit down and write something in the poetry space, or when you see someone else doing something similar, because not everyone, you don't have to write or even read or share to go to these poetry spaces. But I think like if you can see someone, and if you can hear someone express their life experience in a way that lines up with your experience, especially because queerness is so not often represented in popular media and common media,
it is not it's not the normal, it's what's the word called again?
Conventional?
Conventional.
Yeah.
It's not it doesn't tend to be what's conventional norms with relationships or sexuality.
Exactly.
That's what I meant. Excuse
and even
me.
and I think sexuality, but gender as well, especially I use they them pronouns. I'm non-binary.
Okay.
And I think the gender expression is hugely important as well, because I think you could look at a lot of popular media, and granted I think we're a bit better with representation in terms of sexuality. So you might see more cis gay men or cis lesbians and those sort of relationships. Not perfect, but it's improved a lot in the past 20 years. But I still think you can live a lot of your life as a genderqueer person and as a queer person, especially someone of any sort of intersecting identities, and not really see yourself represented, but your community is way more likely to be like you, especially in the queer community. So
when you find it, I want to make that clear.
When you find it, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and once you find your community, it can help you grow so much.
Yeah.
So much. It helped me grow. I'll be honest. It helped me grow. It helped me grow. I don't know what I am. Maybe I am queer.
Yeah. Queer's a great catch-all. I encourage people to use it.
Yeah. I think my relationships are not the normal experience that people have. It's very unique, and I can see, and what you're saying, I can see it's a similar experience for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I feel so just welcomed and by the community, and so much gratitude for the queer community in Cork, for the poetry community specifically. But I think it really does, the city slogan for Cork City is a safe harbor. I think a safe harbor for all specifically. And sometimes Cork fails to live up to that.
I should hear that a bit more.
I know, there is racism.
Honest, if you asked me about what was Cork's slogan, I don't think I would have known it was that. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Because there's racism, homophobia, sexism. We see these awful attacks in the streets. It's not it's a perfect place, but I think it's a great ideal to strive for, and I think there is an extremely strong queer community, which makes it a safer harbor for more queer people coming. It's I describe it as San Francisco a lot of the ways of the San Francisco of Ireland, because I just feel you see a lot of queer people. It's not the biggest city, but you feel you see a lot of queer people moving here. So, or maybe that's just my selection bias. I mean,
it is sometimes what the pack. I noticed that there's a bit of a paradox, that when you get involved with something, you start seeing it everywhere. Yeah. It's so unusual. When I first started going to poetry, the next day I went to a book launch. Yeah. And I saw exactly the same people. I started seeing it everywhere. It was so unusual. I'm sure there's a name perception bias,
Yeah. It's funny. I think one of my partners, one of my exes, when we were dating, because I'm from Colorado initially, and they would have said to me that ever since we started dating, I just see Colorado everywhere, mentioned in media. I see it on shirts. You know what I mean? It just comes up, but you're sensitive to it. But yeah.
Yeah, and I know it's so unusual. I had the same experience when I was, I had a best friend in Portugal.
Yeah.
And then, what do you know? I started seeing Portugal everywhere to the point that Portugal won the Eurovision that year.
Manifesting, that's what that was.
Oh my God. It was even changing reality. It was even affecting reality. It's so funny that happens. And that can happen with the arts as well. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think having these it can change your reality. We talked about sort of normalization earlier, you know what I mean? There's a lot of heteronormative cultural messaging that can make those experiences seem like the way that you should live your life. But once you actually start existing in these queer circles, or whatever sort of your community is, then a sort of new normal emerges, and a new standard for which you and your community live by.
Maybe it's your normal. You start finding the normality that. Well, you start being comfortable with your normality.
Exactly.
I think that's it. I think that's it. Once you start going to these groups, or you find your pack, you could potentially find or be comfortable in who you are and what you are and what your own normality can give you.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well, where we sort of create these almost like we create these bubbles where it's like most of my friends aren't cis. You know what I mean?
Really?
And yeah, I'd have mostly trans friends, a lot of like queer, sort of mostly people from various aspects of the queer community, which is really funny compared to like what I would have had in like college or at other points in my life, where it's like I would have been the only queer person in some of my friend groups. Like I grew up in a very rural, small part of America, and sort of being the only gay in the village wasn't fun. And then to turn around and be like, oh Jesus, I've like I look around and do I have any straight friends? I surely do. You know what I mean?
So actually, you know what? Since there's still a lot of people that don't know much about this community, do you mind explaining that a lot of your friends are not cis, if you don't mind me asking?
So
just so we can communicate that out there and make people teach people, you know?
So a little bit of the basics. So there's two things that are important to many people's identities, which is gender and sex. Sex is to deal with anatomy. So you might be born with XY chromosomes, XX chromosomes, or some sort of intersex in between, and often people conflate gender and sex. So for example, when you're born, a doctor will look at you, look at your genitalia, look at your secondary sexual characteristics, and say, oh, you're a boy, you're a girl. And like that's actually like, you know, and often, you know, so what a cis person is it's a person who identifies with the gender assigned to them at their birth, or specifically the gender that presumably lines up with their sex. Now, there are can be some instances, for example, someone might be intersex and not know it. So it's not always, so that's why it's the sort of gender assigned at birth. So anyway, point being is that a lot of people will live their lives like, you know, I have male referring to the sex. Someone might be like, I have male characteristics and I identify as a man, and that suits them down to the ground. That's fine. But other people might want to explore their gender in a way that's a bit more queer, that doesn't necessarily line up. That's where you get sort of like trans women or trans men or non-binary people. There's a whole sort of spectrum of gender queerness, and I think there's also a really important conversation. We don't have time to get all into it, but the gender is performative.
I want to keep it very floaty, so that you know that people can be the first time hearing this sort of thing.
Because like gender is performative, so we're all
gender is performative.
Exactly. Like Judith Butler speaks to this a lot in their research. It's the idea that like even if you're cis, you are still performing gender based on the societal expectations that are being imposed on you. And I think the nice thing about being genderqueer is that you're being a bit more intentional. It's similar to you say earlier, where we find what kind of normal is comfortable for you. You know, when you find this community. So
in the society, what's general in society is just not fulfilling that.
Yeah.
You feel left out.
Yeah, people are feeling unfulfilled for many reasons, but like gender can be one of them, where people, like, you know, a lot of men will erase themselves emotionally because they feel they have to do that as men. A lot of women will shoulder huge emotional burden because they're told they have to as women. And the idea about being genderqueer is that like you're trying to find the expressions of femininity, masculinity, or whatever else that is comfortable to you. So even if you're cis, what I always encourage people is to try to be more intentional about how you perform your gender. Are you doing something because you want to do it? Or are you doing something because you're a man and it's expected? Or because you're a woman and it's expected? So
And the heterosexually umbrella can be very daunting, because that's the most that's been there for a long time.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why when I talk about I'm non-binary, and what that means is I don't identify as a man or a woman. I sort of exist, the man and woman being the sort of traditional gender binary, which, you know, is very exclusionary to a lot of other identities. So I use they, them pronouns, and I just prefer not to be gendered specifically.
Yeah.
There's a certain gender fluidity in my presentation. I think I'm quite butch, but, you know, sometimes I'll dress more femininely, sometimes I'll dress more masculinely, with more masculinity, but you know, the point is that I express myself in the ways that feel right to me in the moment, and I have that freedom, and it has been a freedom, and poetry is a big part of that, because
it has been a journey. I was thinking as well that poetry's been part of that journey.
Yeah, it's about the central self-exploration, about saying something honest, you know what I mean? And that's where it all comes back to, like, the importance of queer open mics like Litrica, is people can come and try to honestly express themselves. And I've seen so many genderqueer poets be able to express their life experiences in just so many beautiful ways. And, you know,
Yeah,
there's
it's
real
great
power in
community.
that.
It's great community. I love it so much. It's funny as well, as you were saying, as we were talking about such a deep, complicated topic. The wind blew so beautifully.
Exactly.
I'm wearing my headset, so Dylan, you just have to imagine that that there was a lovely ambience as you were talking there. It's such a serious topic, and I'm wondering what the audience go like. Oh, what's such a deep topic, and the wind sounds so lovely, and there's amber leaves flowing right past us. What a
Well,
what an unusual mix.
That's so grounding, and, like, I bring a lot of that into that sort of imagery of nature. Like, I'm obviously an environmental activist, an environmental scientist.
Into your poetry, you put into your poetry about discovering yourself.
Yeah.
You talk about nature.
Exactly, and I think it's quite appropriate that, you know, we are surrounded by the wind and the leaves and the bird song, because all this stuff is very real. I think we exist in a society that has a lot of sort of emergent systems, you know, whether it be gender or finance or debt or property ownership, these things that aren't truly real but do affect our lives. And I think to get in touch with the real, the more than human world, very often referred to as nature, I think can help us in saying something honest. Because if we're really tied up in, oh God, what am I meant to be as, like, this person in society, that can be quite an overwhelming experience. But if you're sitting out in nature, if you're by running water, if you're listening to birdsong, you're sort of in touch with the soft animal of your body.
Oh, wow,
quote the Mary Oliver poem.
You're in touch with you.
Exactly.
Your inner spirit.
Yeah, and so, like, I would incorporate a lot of geology and ecology sort of metaphor into my poetry, because I think, to me, that speaks. I'm able to speak to, like, the realness of my feeling through the realness of the natural world, if that makes sense. Because you also write, at least from the poems I've heard of yours, like, there tends to be a lot of fungal exploration, which I truly adore. So
Yeah.
is that something you find in your work? What's your relationship to nature metaphor in your work?
Oh, so, sure. Like, my favorite color has always been the color green, not for a nationality reason. It's because I really love nature. I really love the outdoors, and when I just go outside and when I go outside and have an adventure, I just come back and feel so whole and so fun, and it is great. Like,
yeah,
and
I like that word adventure specifically, because I think
adventures
it's
are
play.
so important. Yeah.
You know, there's no point in an adventure really, except for the enjoyment itself. You know, like, and I think that's something we lose. Like, just the being in nature, the being a person, the being alive, not having a point in it. That's where sort of nature and the more than human world is so lovely.
You mentioned lose. What do you mean by that? So you mean, like, there's a chance you can get out of touch with nature?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I was lucky enough to grow up in the Rocky Mountains, sort of in a very rural area.
Oh, wow.
Which was gorgeous. It really shaped how intensely I feel about conservation and climate action, environmentalism, because we do live in such a beautiful world, and I was very lucky to experience a lot of that. But I think, and I enjoy living in the city to have access to the culture and the people in the community. But I think, and, like, urban environments are nature. You know, there is nature there. There is ecological systems and processes happening. There is life. I really reject, similar to how I reject the man-woman gender binary, I really reject the nature metropolis binary, because these are
urban and
rural,
I suppose.
Exactly, yeah, because you know, nature exists all around us, but I think people can lose sight of that. People don't see it. People don't see pigeons as nature. People don't see the trees lining their streets as nature. People don't see themselves as nature, which I think it's a radical sort of form of self-denial to think of ourselves as anything other than part of the, what's it called, the natural world around us.
I wonder how that happens. Is it collective the collectiveness is much stronger in the city. I don't know. This is new ground for me.
Yeah, people aren't taught to think about it. I think is that like people are
Yeah.
very persuadable. We're educated in certain ways. We're exposed to certain messaging, and like I say earlier, that's why poetry spaces are so, and that's why artistic spaces are so important, because you're invited to think about the world in a different way. And I think whether it's the poetry I write and share at Literature, or whether it's the workshops we do with the Cork Queer Nature Collective. For example, we've done some poetry writing workshops on kinship, where we really invite people to not anthropomorphize the living creatures around them, but to try to like phytomorphize or hydromorphize, or like think about what is it like to be a river, what is it like to be a blue jay, what is it like to be a mycelial network, and try to truly view the other living things around us and the other parts of the natural world as kin, rather than something that because I think we're often taught, at least in a lot of Western societies, to view nature as something that we extract resources from,
Yeah.
something we have dominance over, and that's just, I think, sad and horrific.
Yeah, there's a lot more ways to describe a bear than giving it a voice.
Yeah,
That's basically what anthropomorphize is. So I wanted to
yeah,
get that. Get cut, because what you said there was so beautifully. But yeah, I never thought of it that way before. Like, describe a bear as a bear in its habitat and what the challenges it goes through, instead of just giving it a voice and giving it a human-like appearance.
And we're limited by our own perspective. Of course, we're human and we understand the world through a human lens. That's fine. That's not a fault of ours. But I think to try to really push that boundary, push the limits of how can we conceptualize, because we're often too encouraged to think about nature relationally to us, rather than something that exists independently and has its own beauty and its intrinsic value and processes. Because I love humans. I really love humans. I really hope we have a long, fruitful time on this planet. But eventually we'll go extinct at some point.
Yeah.
And life will keep on going. And we are one expression of life. We are not the pinnacle of it. We are not the end. We're not the alpha nor the omega. We are just one droplet in the stream. And I think we're really encouraged to think of ourselves as, as a boat on top of the water, rather than, a droplet within it.
I'd like to kind of add to that a bit, that you mentioned that I think we're on the same journey as nature itself. I think there's more to that. I think that droplet is on the same current as everything else. And yeah, I love the way you said we're not at a peak, but I think we're definitely not the peak, but we're definitely not separate as well. That we're on the same current as everything else.
Yeah.
And we tend to think that we're both on top of it, which sounds beautiful, but we're on the same journey, we're at the same endpoint.
Yeah, and this is where I think it might not be obvious to people initially, but there is such a connection between queerness and nature. This whole idea of queer ecology, which is a form of ecological practice that looks at studying nature and understanding nature sort of through a queer lens, and queer sort of being the other. So queer ecology is essentially any sort of ecology that isn't conforming to the sort of typical, often heteronormative structures of how we talk about nature. For example, one of the obvious examples is that we would gender plants, or this is a great way to look at it. When we're taught evolution, like when I was taught evolution in my undergraduate, we're often taught about it in terms of like sexual selection and competition, which sometimes makes sense for some animal species, but we really ignore the complex and world of like plant reproduction, which often can have asexual elements. It's not nearly as competitive in a machismo bravado way that people like to latch onto. And it's trying to separate, similar to what I was saying earlier, is you're trying to understand for example, reproductive systems of a tree species, not in an anthropomorphic human lens, but trying to understand it for its own sake. And I think, the beauty about queer ecology and being a queer ecology practitioner is that we're able to really challenge a lot of the limiting ways that we're encouraged to think about nature.
So creative.
Yeah, for example, there's this whole idea that that, like I said earlier, we are not the pinnacle of evolution.
Yeah.
The idea that, oh, we are high, and but this language is used colloquially, like, oh, a more evolved species. What does that mean? People say more evolved, and they mean better, they mean superior, they mean higher in
Mm-hmm.
status. But like, there's two ways to look at this. First of all life comes from the same source, the same last universal common ancestor, which was an mRNA replication machine in the primordial soup of the earth, which all life has sprung from, which is insane and gorgeous and is my religion. But what's it
You
called?
see it in Star Trek, actually.
Right?
That's why I
Like,
started
all
laughing.
life has had an equal amount of time since that initial event to evolve. So,
Yeah.
every bacteria, every tree, every fungus, every
Every piece of
person.
nature. And the same ingredients, all the elements, the
Yeah,
oxygen, the sun.
yeah. We're all as equally evolved. Another way to look at this, and this is counter to sort of the narratives of dominance and the narratives of human superiority. So we have quite long generations. You know what I mean? We might only reproduce every 20 to 30 years. There are bacteria or insects that produce much faster than us on the rates of like minutes, hours, days, weeks. So if we're speaking of evolution in terms of generation sizes,
Of human generation sizes.
of any generation sizes, bacteria is way more evolved, quote unquote, than humans
Yeah,
are,
never
because they've
thought
gone
about
through
that.
more generational cycles.
And they do adapt extremely fast
Yeah.
compared to what humans can.
Yeah, but also evolution isn't a destination. We're not going towards a superior
Yeah, it's not a tree.
final
It's not
product.
roots. It's not roots.
It's a route. It's like water going downhill. You wouldn't look at any point of the river and say this is the most evolved part of the river. Like, man, the water's just flowing downhill. This is just the path that it chose. It's just the path that works. That's what evolution is.
Yeah.
It's just finding the things that work through natural selection. And I really, as a queer ecologist, it really angers and upsets me when people co-opt the language of nature and sort of colloquial, often misunderstood and baseless understandings of nature to reinforce their power structures. I read this great essay. Unfortunately, can't remember who wrote it, but at the moment, was talking about how we shouldn't rely on, as queer people, we shouldn't rely on appeals to diversity to justify our inclusion into society, because so diversity comes from this idea of genetic diversity, that if you have a population that has genetic diversity, it's more likely to survive.
Okay.
Disturbance, disruption, capacity. It's like, why are we saying that diversity matters? Because it gives the society broader resilience and utility. That's true. But shouldn't queer people exist just because we exist? And shouldn't we just exist because we shouldn't be included because diversity is our strength? We should be included because, God damn it, we're here. And
Yeah.
we shouldn't be denied. And
Yeah.
we shouldn't be dispossessed. And I think yeah, and also when we start talking about genetics, is a study that is hugely influenced. You can't disconnect the study of genetics from the practice of eugenics, which isn't to say all geneticists are eugenicists, but just that the study of genetics has often been done hand in hand with some very backwards, some very, bigoted ways of looking at people. It's, for example, it's interesting that people who think there is a master race or who thinks there is a genetically superior group of people, they always happen to be part of that group of people. You'll never see, for example, you very rarely see Latino white supremacists, for example. It'd be very odd for people to be like, oh, there is a genetically superior person in Ubermensch, and I just happen to not be among them. You know what I mean? And this is what I mean. People co-opt these scientific understandings, the concept of nature and diversity and genetics and evolution, and they take those to justify
They
their
cherry pick them,
pre-existing
don't they?
worldviews. Yeah.
They cherry pick them, and sometimes there's no grounded basis for them.
Yeah, people use science to justify pre-existing bigotry rather than rather than people having a, unbiased look at the facts and then coming up with a bigoted opinion at the end. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that makes sense. But, people, I really despise when I see science and specifically the study of nature, which I love so much and so dearly, to see it be weaponized by people for hateful ends. It's despicable.
You know, I can see it happening in our society. All right, and it is being twisted. It's there in our media sometimes. You could see it. All right.
Yeah, and that's why I think being able to self-express is so important. You know, bringing it back to the poetry
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah.
you know there's a lot as we've discussed throughout this whole thing, that there are a lot of dominant narratives in society that are incongruent with people's actual lived experiences, and being able to and what sort of is a comfortable normal for them. And so being able to write your poetry and go to a place like Litrica, it's just really valuable, really important.
And what would you recommend for that in writing? How would you recommend? What's your advice about how to write that? Because that sounds, there's a lot there, and it
Yeah.
sounds extremely challenging. So
Yeah.
what you recommend to any writer that wants to write about their nature and all these things that might be going on in their head about society?
I think specificity is really important, and I
What's
would
that? Excuse me.
sorry.
Specific. Oh, my stutters are coming in. What is
Right.
that?
So specificity, focusing in, really honing in on particular details and particular experiences. For example, like I've been inspired to try to write like a climate change poem. As someone with a lot of climate anxiety, as a climate activist, I have a lot of
Wow.
thoughts on it. But it's such an all-encompassing issue. Similarly, with the sort of decline of rule of law and the increased abuses that are happening in my home country of the United States, I've been trying to write like an America poem, similar into the sort of vein of like Allen Ginsberg's poem America. But it's just really hard because these are really large topics. They're all-encompassing, and to try to, you know, so the point is like, don't write a climate change poem, don't write an America poem, write about write about a flood that you experienced, or write about one species you'll miss that is extinct or is likely to go extinct. Really hone in on these elements.
Yeah, you're zooming in instead of just talking about the broad topic. Because when you talk about the broad topic, you could be floating over what you actually want to talk about.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that like, be inspired, read other people's works, look at the other people in your community, see what they do, but know that you should write because no one else in the world can capture your experience.
Yeah.
And specifically, that's a reason to try to like find your own voice. I think it's often very useful to try to mimic people when you're starting out, when you're trying to figure out what works for me, what doesn't.
Oh yeah.
But I think like just really trying to write something that's specific to your experience is the best advice I can give for poetry writing. And the second best advice is just write.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
get 5 rough drafts down. Like,
I think I say it in every episode, but flex that creative muscle. You definitely go into the gym whenever you go to Litrica or Ovale or Underground Loft. Ovale, Govale, excuse me.
Yeah.
Whenever you go to these creative gatherings, you're actually flexing that muscle, even though you're not going off the open mic.
Yeah. And like you say, it's a muscle. It is something you sort of keep. You should keep at, and the more you do, the more insights you'll have.
The more expressive, the more you can put your feelings into words.
Yeah, it's iterative, and like that's what I love about poetry, is that it's something that can be completed in an afternoon. You know what I mean? Like, poems can be done whenever you want them to be done, as opposed to novels. So it's very, and I'm someone who benefits a lot from iterative growth, from completing something, seeing what works, seeing what different, and then starting again. And so that's why I think if anyone's trying to get into sort of any sort of self-expression, especially if you want to be any kind of writer, I think poetry is extremely valuable, because you're able to sort of have a high, like similar to the bacteria, there's a high generational turnover. You know what I mean? Like the generation cycles for pieces of poetry are quite quick and speedy compared to things like short films or painting or writing books. These things take much longer, a lot more time. And so the beautiful thing about it, like, write haikus. Just start with haikus. That can be a really good, because it's very specific structure.
They're nature based.
Exactly. Yeah. So
yeah, and they'll be very quick. You can talk about structure, and also like haiku is a great kind of I remember we did a poetry workshop years ago, and the first thing we did was a haiku.
Yeah.
It's a very easy structure.
Yeah. And I think another thing, one of the things that really freed me is sort of realizing that sometimes form can be quite liberating, especially if people are sort of unsure of how they want to approach writing. But like realizing I could write free-form poetry sort of in the vein of like Andrea Gibson or Allen Ginsberg, who are two sort of great poetic inspirations of mine. that really suited my voice, that really suited my stream of consciousness and the many sort of disparate thoughts I have. So similar to like it's all about finding your comfort. That's all about life. That's all that life is about generally.
That's all
You
life
know,
wants from you, is to find
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, like just love the things that you love, find the spaces that suit you, express your gender in a way that suits you,
Express
find
yourself and the gender, yeah.
yeah, be
Yeah.
friends with people that suit you.
Yeah.
Like it's, I think too often people do things they feel they have to do, and so often for the wrong reasons. And unfortunately, we live in a society where a lot of us do have to live in discomfort. We have to go to work. We
Yeah.
have to pay rent.
It
or
feels
else
like
we'll
we have to do this
physically suffer.
fulfillment. We have to
Yeah.
feel this fulfillment. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like we have to do a lot of these. We have to do a lot of things that we might not necessarily want to do. But there are areas of our lives where we have control over, and I think artistic expression and personal expression is a big part of that. So.
Dylan, there's so much there. I'm learning new words as well as learning new things.
I told you, get me going.
Oh my God, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. God, we have an intellectual person here in the park with me. Wow.
Oh, there's two intellectuals here.
I think I felt earlier, like, I was like, why am I trying to add this when I don't just show I can come up with the same words?
Sure, look, it's, we all have our loves.
Dylan,
Yes.
I think what we could do now is that since we're in a nature environment, do you want to give us a poem to add to the nature environment?
Yes.
And then what I think we could do is that I have a few ideas in mind that are you comfortable giving 2 poems?
Yes, please and thank you.
Yeah, 2 poems. And I think we're going to have a little exercise that I think everyone should join in with us there in a little while. Hold in store for that. But now, Dylan is going to give us 2 poems. Take it away, Dylan. Are you ready, man?
Yeah. So, as I've been discussing my relationship with nature and my relationship with gender, these are things that are very important for how I express myself in poetry. This poem is called Sedimentary Processes. I'm being evicted again, unfortunately, and I've had to pack things up. And in so doing, I've been stumbling across a lot of old love letters, and I've been reflecting on loves of the past and old relationships, and I was trying to capture that feeling in this poem. And
I'm sorry to hear that's happening to you, man.
Yeah, it's miserable. It's it's Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael's fault. Like it's not
It's
not incidental.
I think it goes back further than that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But please share that with us.
Yeah, and so the second poem will do more specifically with the feelings of eviction, but this one is to do with old love letters, and I use a lot of flooding imagery. My master's dissertation was on flood risk reduction, and so it's a well I constantly tap. Okay, so sedimentary processes. I reflect vexatiously on the flirtatious me of the past, peering precariously into a stone well of washed-up emotions, drowned and damp, condensation on my conscience, impermeable. Love letters fetter my heart, chains that link to an uncanny past, which I think fast through. To view the hue of that era written in rock is heresy. It was me, but wasn't, and mustn't be again, my friend. Welcome to the quiet after the flood. The soil is disturbed and damp from the deluge, washlands in which sentiment seeks refuge, but the waters here have receded, there's no lessons to be heeded. Who wants to know a story with an ending? Who wants to hear a story with no bending twists and turns? So why overturn stones which have already tumbled down the river raw and thrashing, bashing themselves in the wet mess and stress of guesses? Will they? Won't they? I dare say we did, and won't again. The brash, beautiful boulders have been weathered, brandished, and shined. You have yours, and I have mine, these pebbles of our time together, forever perfectly circular, always brings me near here. This stony creek beach is a meek spread of littered love, the sentimental sediment processing what I couldn't. I dig my hand through the sand slowly as if I'm holding yours, making a pile of things that once made you smile, bright blue glass, wild spiraled violet shells, and that auspicious child of Prague whose pale pearl eyes cry seeping fog, shrouding the drowning stones still stream-bound, being silently ground to dust. I can tell you the color of them if I must, but I fear I'd rather not hear it, not stare too deeply in the pebble pool, lest I encounter some radiant jewel, a shining sapphire by any other hue. I've got the beachcomber blues. Thank you.
Oh, Dylan, that's incredible that you're actually like writing your. It sounds like your heart is breaking. Actually, that's what it sounds like. Your heart is breaking. Are you writing to the house? Is that the house you're talking about? As if you had a ship or?
I've another. The next poem will be about the house. Actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But this poem was just reflecting on old love letters.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
you're okay.
I'm so confused.
Because both the eviction is causing me to reflect on old relationships. But yeah, no. So this
maybe we retreat a small bit with that. That's so embarrassing with me.
No, it's okay.
Maybe we could leave that in.
You can go back and ask me a question about it.
Oh God, I was listening to God. Dylan really has something for this house.
No, this one was about a lover.
But
yeah.
Man, but even so, like. I noticed as well the river came back.
Yes.
We were discussing about river earlier.
Yeah. And
there, you were actually using river as imagery.
Yeah.
So, like, is it like... And you mentioned that when we were looking for a spot, the river.
Yeah.
Do you really like rivers?
I do. Along the my research areas historically have been in flooding and wildfires.
Okay.
So I rely on imagery of floods and fires quite often. Part of it is that I just know a lot about it. We write what we know, and I have a lot of vocabulary to work with these topics, but I also think they're very evocative images. And what I love about researching disasters is that it's not the disaster's fault. You know what I mean? These are tragedies, and they hurt people. But
especially nature.
Exactly.
Especially natural disasters.
Like floods happen. Here's the thing, actually. We don't use that word in disaster research, natural disaster. Because disasters are... You have disturbances and you have hazards. For example, a flood is a hazard. A wildfire is a hazard. It only becomes a disaster when society fails. When we fail to put in place systems to protect people. For example, so disasters can be considered as like caused by natural phenomenon like flooding or fires, but a war is a disaster, you know? A building collapse is a disaster. All these things, the effects of a disaster can be mitigated by policy and procedures. For example, we would never say that, oh, Your Honor, it was a natural murder. It was a natural robbery. Like, why are you taking away the agency of the governing bodies in protecting people within the society? You know what I mean? So there's if you take nothing else away from the podcast today, don't use the phrase natural disasters. It completely takes away the responsibility of the people who are meant to protect you.
I want to say, like, what you're saying is big scientific terms, big, you're using your science background for everything you just said there, which is incredible. But what's also cool is that what that poem was just you talking about what happened with that love and what ended up happening. And it's incredible that you combined your science background and just about your raw background.
Yeah. I often say, when I'm asked for a little blurb to explain like who I am as a poet, I often say I try to capture the personal emotions and experience through the language of the more than human world, often referred to as the natural world.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, I have this knowledge base. For example, if I was a mechanic, I'd write a lot more about gears and oil and grease and engines. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
I've heard it. I heard poems like that. I heard scientists write poems, and
yeah.
they're incredibly logic.
I have a few poems about bicycle maintenance, so there's. But I think like it's just something that makes a lot of sense for me, and I think water and fire and nature, they're very forgiving metaphors because nature's all encompassing, and there's so much inspiration to be drawn from the
Yeah,
natural world.
yeah,
So
yeah,
in that poem, I'm reflecting on a relationship that has ended and a person that I miss.
yeah.
But it's at least I this the kind of energy I'm trying to bring to the poem, that I don't think it's a sort of like regretful poem. I think it's the sort of thing where it's like I'm just sitting with these emotions. It's the quiet after the flood. There's no event that's going to happen. There's no change to be done. There's nothing to be done. Like if you've ever
There's
been
nothing to go back as well.
exactly, like if you've ever been to a area that's been flooded, there's so much sediment that has been dropped. There's so much sediment that has been carried by the water. There's these bits of debris that have been brought on from the deluge, and I just thought that was very evocative for a way to understand being stuck with emotions. You know what I mean? Because I guess what I'm saying is that like I am reflecting on these old relationships. I don't have these romantic notions of like, oh, we should get back together, or it was a mistake to end it. Like I'm very content with how things went, and I feel like, and that's why I really like it was one of the inspirations for the poem was this line like, welcome to the quiet after the flood, because if you've ever been anywhere after a flood or a huge rainstorm, there is just such a tranquility, and you're sitting in devastation, but there's calm, and that's what it feels like for me to reflect on old relationships. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a beautiful poem. It's a beautiful poem. Give us the one about the relationship with your house.
Yes. So this one,
I might leave that mistake in because it's so funny.
The other love of my life. So this is termination date. So this one I wrote in tears after receiving a termination notice from my landlord, which was giving us 6 months notice, saying that we are evicted. And this was an in-person meeting. The landlord came over, and I mentioned that because you'll see that in the poem. I'm sort of reflecting on his flippant musings about the house and his sort of callousness. It's interesting as well. In my opinion, I don't want to preempt it too much, but in my opinion, this is actually one of my poems that doesn't have a lot of nature imagery.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's just I was writing in such a raw position. But anyway, I'll let the poem speak for itself. This one is called Termination Date. Ahara, I regret to inform you our home is being dissolved, rendered, sold. Lorraine's life support screams silent. We are but IVs clinging to a corpse, a chore to dispose of, and unfit to feed the greater parasite which lumbers swollen at our door. Its door, I suppose, by rights. Acidic salivation coating a coveted asset. 6 months' notice means nothing when I now feel the walls spasm and rejecting, inflamed, set to cast out the foreign infection, cleansing itself for the change. 5 tenants becoming 7 or 9 or 11, twigs in some vulture's nest egg, suckered and desperate students, salted and limp sardines, crammed and fatigued, robbed of a place to breathe, squelching, rancid, rotting. I heave back tears, salted and limp, as the current homeowner openly, cheerfully speculates on what's to come. The sitting room, our first Christmas and so many cozy nights with the Belchers pressed our shapes sagged into blue sofas destined for the skip, placeholder for 2 tiny twins. The kitchen table where we planned our lives and prepared our meals is to be chucked and chopped and chipped, mulch from which sprouts new walls, carving the dining hall into 2 rooms or more. The back garden, best crowded with our loved ones who came to play and be gay, huddled around fire, forging new bonds of friendship, strength for us all. The love started here, the masks shed, the spirits raised in admiration of one another, There is so much warmth. From the ashes of our fraternity, a granny flat stands. And your room, once ours, now mine, till the sands pour out, that beautiful wall-length wardrobe which weighed on your feng shui is a waste of space. Some cowboy will take it away. I hope the dozen or so desperate students understand their whitewashed squalor was once the center of my world, as they carved themselves hollow for payment. In the eyes of the lords, the love made here never entitled us to a home. The money did. I remain in my Fina Fall forsaken city, drowning in liquidation. Yours mournfully, Dylan. Shanae.
Oh, Dylan, that's when I think people write, you expect a poem that's so personal to be of anger, but I think that poem is just melancholy, a loss.
Yeah.
And
Mourning.
and I think you said a lot more by writing the poem that way.
Yeah, thank you.
And not reflecting, because I expect you're angry as well, but no, you wrote about your sadness, and I'm sorry about that, but thank you for putting those into words, and I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to that today.
Unfortunately, yeah, and I'm sorry if you can. I've been evicted many times in my life. I've always struggled with housing security, and it tears
In Ireland.
In Ireland, but even in the States, like, being raised by a single mother, like, we couldn't always afford to live places. And it racks at your nervous system because, we crave stability.
It racks when you just have a house.
Yeah,
have
a home.
You have a home, and what's going to happen the next day?
Yeah, I'm finding it so hard. I don't think I want to start a family, but I don't feel like I ever could if I wanted to. You know what I mean? I try to have the stability. I don't feel like I'll ever have the stability of a home.
Cost as well.
Yeah, the cost is insane. And I think it's interesting that you highlight the sort of melancholy of it because, I do feel anger, but I find it so hard to be angry at people. I think I'm perhaps overly sympathetic. But, I despise the landlord. He's committing violence and cruelty to us. He doesn't care if he makes us homeless. And I've been homeless before, so it's a very real threat. But I just... To me, I think there's a time and a place for anger, and there's a way to use anger productively. But I find it very hard to hate people. And, hating someone isn't the same as processing your grief. And I say mourning intentionally. Like, I had at the time of recording, I had a memorial for my home last night. We had a funeral service. It was a party. I had friends over, but I had them dressed in all black funeral attire. I wore a veil. We had eulogies where I read this poem, and because I'm such a community person, I would have these, and I had the space for it. I had a lovely large back garden, and which is so rare in Ireland, and I would have people over frequently. I would have these large parties, and so I invited everyone over for one last party, and I gave my eulogy, and I read this poem, and I spoke of the importance to the house to me, and I encouraged people to come and just eulogize and speak if they felt so compelled, and my other housemates spoke, and many of my friends spoke, and to me, I think when we talk about normalization, it's really treated as normal to unhouse people, to dispossess them, to drive them into homelessness, to take people's homes and stability away from them. We can talk about property rights, and we can talk about ownership, we can talk about that, but fundamentally it is violence to drive someone from their homes.
Yeah,
and
it's like taking food away from people.
Yeah,
it's nearly like that.
And it's a death. It's a death, and it's to be mourned, and I feel like people hold a lot of this pain unprocessed, and I feel like that's why a lot of people connect with this poem, is because, and I'm so grateful I was able to have a funeral and to really try to mourn. I turned the living room into a scrapbook where I put memorabilia and bits of items collected over the 3 years I lived in the house, which is some of the longest housing stability I've had in my life, to put those all up along the walls and really turn the room itself into a memory.
You said it was the longest. How long were you there?
3 years. So longest stability I've had in Ireland, and longest stability I've had in a long time, generally speaking, because I was always
3 years, not a long time still.
9, right?
And it will make you very conscious about the next space you're going to move into. So
Yeah, it's
Can't
a lot.
imagine.
Like I said, it tears away at your nervous system. It eats away at you, and it makes it hard to do the other things like focus on, trying to launch a career or trying to start a family or trying to find any sort of other stability when this sort of and 20 what was it? I think it was the most recent stats are 22 children and their families every day go homeless. There's 22 new homeless children every day in Ireland because of the deliberate policy of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and the sort of neoliberal housing policies which treat housing as a commodity, a
Yeah.
speculative asset, something to extract wealth from,
Oh, I got
rather
no
than
words.
something that's essential for people's lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope to have a home one day that feels stable, and this one really did for a long time, and it was lovely, and I'm grateful for it. And that's why I put the morning into the poem, because it feels like a death. It's the death of a loved one, that loved one being a home. And I'm really sorry that so many people can relate to it.
Thanks so much for putting those into words. I can see a lot of people being inspired by that, inspired by you putting into such a voice of reason, actually, more than the flash anger that a lot of people can accidentally turn to. That I hope that eventually, if we collect our voices like that, it would make a difference. We usually have a musician on our show, but this is an episode where Dylan took the full reins of the musician. Let's turn the tide now and just talk about the music. The band is called Flo and the Shyhounds. I think I've only met the two musicians once, and tell us about them. Do you want to introduce them?
So I'm friends with the band members. I'm trying to describe their sounds. I've been to the 2 concerts they've had so far. They write, I think, music that sort of treads the line between like sensitive and punk. Some of the songs are quite more like what's it called? I don't really know how to talk about music, to be honest. I just remember I was spending time with Flo, and they were performing one of their songs, and I was talking to them after the concert, and they're like, we never performed that song with so much anger before. It was like it became way more of a punk piece at the time.
Oh,
So
class. I can't wait to hear them.
They're still
Can't
kind of
wait to
finding
share
their
them.
sound. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
They're still finding their sound, but they're very much they're very talented.
I was thinking that while we listen to the song, while the song is on, all of us together, the listeners and Dylan and myself, are going to do a writing challenge. And Dylan and myself are going to pick, let's say, 4 random objects around us, around the scenery that we're here, since we are in scenery, and we're going to put those into a poem with other words, and then we're going to, while the song is playing, we write in the time span of that song. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a 4-word challenge that Dylan and myself are going to pick 4 random words from the scenery around us, and I pick 2, Dylan picks 2, and in the time span of the song, we're gonna write a poem. You guys are welcome to write a poem, and then we could share with each other. You guys can share at open mic. I'd love to hear what you guys come up with. So, Dylan, pick a word. Pick something you see around you.
Riparian.
Riparian.
Riparian. It's the ecological zone where a river meets the land. So you might refer to it as like the bank of the river.
How do you spell that?
Oh, good question. RIPERAN. My filthy Gen Z secret is that, as someone who grew up with spell check, I actually am a very poor speller. So you might have to fact check me.
Yeah, riparian. So that's where the river meets the land.
Yes, exactly.
Riparian. Cool. I'll pick leaf. I'll pick leaf. I'll go with something simple. Leaf. Your turn.
Cage. Which you might not think considering we're out in nature, but there's a sort of lovely sculpture near here,
There's
which is reminiscent of a cage.
Yeah, there's like a structure right next to us. We're right next to Glucksman, so I'm sure a lot of people know what we're talking about. But yeah, there's a architectural cage right next to us, which can lend to some great imagery. And lastly, oh, I got one. Plastic.
Plastic.
You would love that one.
It's about
plastic.
It's good to have. I'm glad we're capturing the range.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're not segregating. Oh, it's nature, and there's nothing around other than nature. I mean, except for the planes flying overhead and the plastic around us.
You can hear the planes
cages.
probably through the microphones. You probably can.
So-
Hey, there's nature in the city, as we said. Okay, so Flo and the Shy Hounds, and Hope. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.
I don't like Washington Street at night. I don't like it. Too many fights and too much on my mind, and I don't like it. Heavy heart, heavy, heavy heart, steady. I look out for a sign in the bookshop. Maybe this one I'll read, or at least stop to take note of what is going on around me. Heavy heart, heavy, heavy heart, go steady. God is taking all my time to not give attention to the same old story that I've got. Wanna walk down Washington Street, no thoughts in my head and my life carefree. Don't wanna hold this heaviness in my heart, but it's heavy. Oh, it's heavy. So heavy. Go steady. Wanna walk down Washington Street. I wanna walk down Washington Street. Would you walk down Washington Street with me? Wanna walk down Washington Street. I wanna walk down Washington Street. Would you walk down Washington Street with me?
Welcome back, everyone. Dylan and myself have poems. I think it's always, like, these challenges are great because, like, what you might have, it's a first draft, but there might be something there that you could work on. Dylan, how did you find that? Did you have fun?
Good, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I ended up writing something that was quite on theme with with the whole discussion generally.
Oh, seriously?
Which wasn't necessarily my intention, but you write what's on your mind. I often find sometimes I'm struck by good imagery, and then I'm like, what is that? What feeling can I attach that to? And I think because of the nature of the challenge, I ended up writing about a river, which was natural with Riparian.
I have a river as well.
Right?
What?
I was definitely catering towards my comfort zone with that. You know what I mean? If worst case scenario, I can always write about river morphology or geology. So,
do you want to read it out for us?
Yeah. So I haven't named it, but conditional labels limit us smothering. A river can never break its banks, not truly. It swells, and in so doing creates a new boundary, still circumferenced, a riparian cage, walls moving with it. The leaf blows over its borders, crossing this tossing threshold, bold in its defiance. A slender, natural knife cuts through plastic, freeing the wild wet within.
Nice work. Nice work. That sounds so whole. Oh, man.
I'll give it a few more drafts.
Oh, it's perfect the way it is. I'll read my one out very quickly. It's nothing compared to that. I sink into the stones of the riparian threshold of the Blackwater River, watching leaves flow downstream on the plastic skin of the water. See swallows practicing to cut the sky. I roll up in my cage and dream of flying to Africa as swallows do, to escape.
Maybe this is just an observation I'm making with the range of your poetry that I've heard, but I often feel like you're writing from the position of a hermit so many times. And I mean that as a compliment. And I think, you know how like St. Kevin would have gone to Glendalough and just allegedly sat for decades, trying to commune with God. I feel like the voice in your poetry often feels like it has a similar vibe, and I greatly admire that.
I'm a hermit that says coming back from to living. That's probably what it is. Oh, Dylan, I had such a ball talking to you out here in the beautiful grounds of UCC in nature, and I've learned so much about everything, I think, from talking to you, even new words. I hope I was able to keep up with you.
Oh God, no! Don't put yourself down. You bring out such brilliant conversations in your guests, and I really have enjoyed talking to you. I find it very stimulating. You're so interested and so interesting, and that's all I can ask for from a host.
You're a great guest for the Morebegsden, man. You're one of us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Lads. Thank you once again for tuning in. I can't wait to hear all your poems. I hope you read them out in the open mic someday. Take care. Dylan and myself are out. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wait, goodbye, Dylan.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.